everybody. Morning. Afternoon, whatever it might be. So this will be the first of 3 Shuso Dharma talks. I'm supposed to give 3 specific talks over the course of my Shuso training, which goes over the course of the practice period, which is slight intensification of practice. And each of these 3 will be on a topic that was given to me by my teacher. So I don't remember what I called this one in the newsletter, but I'm calling it Why the Monastery. So basically, it's supposed to, well, it will talk about what's the difference between monastic practice and a monastery, and then small urban temple practice. Like, is there anything different about it? What is it? I have done 3 angos over the course of the last year. So that 3 periods of intensive training, one at Shasta Abbey in Northern California, and I did one at San Francisco City Center, and then a 3rd one at Tassajara at the training monastery a couple hours south of San Francisco. And then this is the 4th one that I'm in currently, and I've been encouraging everybody else if they want to intensify their practice right now. Please intensify your practice. Part of the Shuso training as well is that I receive a koan that I will work with and study and talk about over the course of my Shuso training as well. And it serves as a theme for both the training and for the Dharma talks that I'll be giving. So I also included this koan in the last newsletter. So if you didn't get a chance to read it, I'm going to go over it again and discuss it. Well, I'll read through it once, and then I'll kind of go through it line by line so we get an idea of what this theme is and how it will relate to practice. And then I'll bring that into the discussion of monastic practice as well a bit, hopefully tie it all together at the end. So the koan that I have is case number 2 in the Blue Cliff record, and this one follows directly on the one that Daishin talked about, I think a couple weeks ago, Bodhidharma talking with Emperor Wu about great emptiness, nothing holy, and then he runs out of there and jumps on a boat and disappears. This one is called The Ultimate Path is Without Difficulty, and I'll read through it real quick again and we'll start discussing it. So, Zen Master Jiao Zhou, addressing the assembly, said, "The supreme way is not difficult, only avoid picking and choosing. The moment that there are words, there is picking and choosing, and there is conceptual clarity. This old monk doesn't dwell within conceptual clarity. Do you still preserve anything or not?" At that time, there was a monk in the assembly who asked, "Since you don't dwell within conceptual clarity, what are you preserving?" Jiao Zhou said, "I don't know either." The monk replied, "Since you don't know, why do you nevertheless say you don't dwell in conceptual clarity?" Jiao Zhou said, "Asking about it is enough. Now bow and withdraw." Though that's probably crystal clear on the face of things. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and we'll go over it. It's about practice for the most part. He is literally quoting the first 2 lines, Jiao Zhou is, from the Zen teaching poem, the Jin Jin Ming, which I found out we'll be chanting next week. So we do chant it every now and then. I'll just go through the first couple stanzas here to get a taste of what it's talking about or what it feels like. And I won't really comment on the Jin Jin Ming specifically as itself, but I will talk about how Jiao Zhou talks about it. So there we go. Very Zen way to do it. So, the great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. If you wish to see the truth, then hold no opinions for or against anything. To set up what you like against what you dislike is the disease of the mind. So Jiao Zhou, in his first 2 sentences here, he says, "The supreme way is not difficult, only avoid picking and choosing." That's the first 2 lines from the Jin Jin Ming. And it gets to kind of an underlying idea in Zen, and actually in Mahayana Buddhism as well, that we just chanted, form and emptiness. He's basically talking about that, form and emptiness, the absolute and the particular, that this whole world, there fundamentally is no distinction between anything, right? Everything is intrinsically intertwined with everything else. However, with the way that we see the world, it don't look like that at all, right? We see all these individual objects everywhere, and this guy here, we see individual people, we've got individual families, we live in individual nations, we have individual bank accounts, we have individual jobs that we go to. It doesn't seem like things are all one thing. So he's going to talk about this relationship and how to kind of navigate it. So he has the proposition, the supreme way is not difficult, just avoid picking and choosing. It's just that easy, just don't have any preferences and you will be like a Buddha. So then he starts to comment on it in the next line, kind of express it in his way. And kind of as a setting, he's basically up in front of a group of monks, like in a monastery, giving a talk to them. That's why there's this cross talk. He's basically inviting his monks to kind of do a little bit of Dharma combat with him. He explains, the moment there are words, there's picking and choosing, and there is conceptual clarity. So the way that we kind of split up this undifferentiated reality is with words and with concepts, right? Dais, or altar, or person, or Shinkyu, right? We kind of lay this conceptual map over everything. And then as soon as we have this conceptual map laid over everything, we tend to have to pick and choose them, right? Morning and night. I actually like the night. I don't like to wake up in the morning. Some people are the other way, right? Or at work, at home. I love to be at home. I don't like to be at work. Or what else do we have? Stub your toe when you're walking down the stairs. You're like, oh, I don't like that. I like not having the toe stubbed. So you just start, these words create these dualities everywhere you see it, and you basically start to pick and choose, preferring ones over the other. And this is kind of how suffering gets into the world, because the way that you think or that you want the world to be, that your conceptual map has laid out the world in front of you, is not necessarily how the world actually is. So he says, the supreme way is not difficult, only avoid picking and choosing. When the moment there are words, there's picking and choosing, and there is conceptual clarity. So usually this word is translated just as clarity. But if you look at the Chinese, the classical Chinese here, this word, it's a little bit more, there's more to it than that. So I read this before. In clarity, you get, I think, a different idea in English than you do when you're looking at the actual characters here. Originally, it's something more like bright and clear or obvious. The actual characters are the characters of the sun, the moon, and the character for white, like the color white. And it's kind of like a metaphor that goes to the heart of what Zhao Zhou is talking about. And it's something that you read about sometimes in old Zen stories, but when I was out at Tassajara, I actually lived this story. I was just like, oh, okay, let's see how this is. Like late at night, when there's the new moon, so there's no moon in the sky whatsoever, and you're walking from the zendo down the trail, the wooded trail to your cabin, and you forget your light, your headlamp, it's so dark you cannot distinguish anything. It's one pure mass of darkness, right? And you're just kind of walking through it. You can't see the trees, you can't see the trail, you can't see the stones. You're just kind of moving through this vast emptiness, basically, of undifferentiated darkness. Then as the days and weeks go by, the moon suddenly comes up. And by the time it's the full moon, its bright white light is so, and it's the light of the sun, is so reflected off of the moon, is so bright that you can see everything. It's like you have a flashlight out there. You can see every individual stone. You can see all the trees. You can read the number on your cabin. So this is pointing, this conceptual clarity is pointing to how our mind differentiates this unboundedness, this pure oneness of everything. So, you tend to think of clarity as being very positive. In this case, it's not positive or negative, but he's saying that as soon as we have words, as soon as we start splitting up this whole thing that we're in, this undifferentiated, boundless everything, that, oh, yeah, I get how everything fits together. It comes right here. It's very, very clear. There's a podium right here, there's an altar there, and there's all these people all lined up. But then Zhao Zhou says, so he set the scene, this contrast between the undifferentiated and just our regular old world of objects. He says, this old monk, he doesn't dwell within conceptual clarity. And in this sentence, actually, in the original Chinese, there's no verb in it. It's just this old monk not within clarity. So you can kind of add your own verb to it. It's a little bit loose. So I picked dwell. Sometimes you see abide. It could just be within. The idea basically is that we have our conceptual side, our part of ourselves that's bounded by words. But there's this whole other pre-verbal way of being that we can tap into, right, when we're sitting on the mat or when we're just going about our day. So he's telling he's kind of offering a challenge up to the monks in the room, being like, I have this whole other way of being that is not reliant on words and phrases. And then he turns it around to them and says, do you still preserve anything or not? Or do you protect anything or not? Meaning, have you split up the world into all these little objects and now you're defending one object over another? So are you living in this, are you in this pre-verbal world of just being? And one of the monks in the assembly says, he sees this and he says, well, he's saying that he's living in this pre-verbal world, but he's using words to express it. And this seems kind of weird. So this is a common thing that comes up when you're reading these old Zen texts. So he comes right out and says it. He says, since you don't dwell within conceptual clarity, since you're not living in words, right? What are you preserving or protecting? It's like is there something that you are protecting even because you're saying this in words? It seems like you're kind of being a little bit contradictory. Yeah, since you're very claimed to be in the pre-verbal realm, since you're claiming this, it makes it seem like you actually are preserving something. Meaning, you're saying you're not picking and choosing, kind of sounds like you're picking and choosing. So Zhao Zhou says, I don't know either. So this is the kind of the crux here, where Zhao Zhou has he sets the scenario up. The monk walks into his little trap, and then Zhao Zhou kind of flips it on him. So when he says, I don't know, this is, for Zhao Zhou, there's two different types of I don't know going on in this phrase that he says. Zhao Zhou's I don't know is not a don't know of ignorance. He knows, but his knowing is a pre-verbal knowing. It's that type of knowing when you're just sitting on the mat and things are going really well, and you're just like, dang, this meditation is great. And then those words just drop away, and then you're just sitting, right? The don't know that the monk is referring to is a don't know, like a verbal don't know, like a little bit of information. It's like, how can you provide me with this little bit of information about how to live without all these words? The way I'm thinking of it is, like an example in real life is, I think everyone's probably driven a car or been in a car here. So, if you're driving, and this goes with anything, even at work and stuff, but for me it's always driving. You're driving in your car, and you're just at one of those moments where you're super focused. You're just, you're avoiding stuff. You're not really thinking about it. You're braking when you need to, and you're accelerating when you have to, and you're passing people, or you're falling back, and you're just vibing with the road. This is Zhao Zhou. This is what he's pointing at. You're not sitting there going like, okay, I need to press the brake pedal down like a 1/4 inch so that I can just back off a little bit, and then I'm going to hit the gas 1 inch so that I can bring the RPMs up to a certain degree, and then I'm going to turn the wheel 45 degrees so I can go that's not how you drive. Maybe when you first start, but that's the verbal part of it. Then there's this whole pre-verbal way of driving where you're just vibing with it, you're just going. So this monk who's asking these questions is in the passenger seat watching Zhao Zhou, and he's calculating. He's doing this calculation. Okay, I see that he pressed on the brake pedal just that much. Okay, and then he's trying to figure it out. And then he asks him, he's like, why did you just do that brake right there? He couldn't figure it out. And Zhao Zhou is basically telling him, he's like, man, I don't know. I'm just driving. I can't answer your question, but I am doing it. He's definitely driving. So the monk is going to answer Jiao Zhou with his, we'll say, erroneous version of don't know. I'm looking for an answer from you instead of being pointed back to just being. He says, since you don't know, why do you nevertheless say you don't dwell in conceptual clarity? If you are really just driving, or if you're just sitting, you're just living, you're just working, you're doing whatever, why are you claiming to be just driving? So the monk is doubling down, right, on the wrong thing. And Jiao Zhou just says, asking is enough. Now bow and withdraw. You're trying to drive with words and concepts. You're trying to live through words and concepts instead of actually just living, just driving, just sitting. So bow and get out of here. So basically, that's how these conversations end. You like bow and you go back to your seat in the assembly. So that's basically the crux of the koan, how to balance just doing, just sitting, just living, just working, just doing the dishes, just making food, with our conceptual thinking. All these words and phrases and ideas and thoughts and plans and hopes and dreams and dislikes and likes that also arise simultaneously in our mind. And back to the topic at hand, the monastery. That's what monastic practice is basically trying to do. It's what it has been honed to do over 2,500 years, is to get you to not necessarily live in the pre-verbal, like flowing with the Tao, but to find the proper balance between both of these ways of living, between emptiness and form, between the absolute and the relative, between the pre-verbal and the verbal. And you can get all that same stuff at a small temple as well. It's just, it's got a different focus here. The way I looked at it is, it's like if you're trying to learn a language. Going to a temple is somewhat similar to taking like a college class, right? You go in the class once a week, which that would be today. But do you go to the office hours? Do you have an informal discussion group set up? Have you gone online and sought resources there? Have you hired a tutor? Have you bought a book in the language to practice? See, a lot of that is on you. When you're at the monastery, however, it's like buying a ticket to a foreign country and then just living there, right? You can't get away from the language you're trying to learn. If you want to have friends, you have to practice the language. If you want to eat, if you want to work, if you want to do anything, right? You have to use that language. No matter how proficient or unproficient you are in it. Like if you just started today, you go to the country, you got to start speaking the language right now or you're going to be in trouble. Or if you're fluent in it, right? You go to the country, you still have to use it. So neither route is better than the other. It's just that it's a matter of what you want to get out of it, how best you learn, what your life situation is at any particular moment. With that thought, I'm going to go into. I'll talk a little bit more specifically about things at the monastery that I have observed and lived through. So, when you're there at the monastery, the environment itself becomes the practice, and you're living in the environment. At least I was 24/7. Basically, you can't get away from it. At Shasta Abbey and at Tassajara, well, Shasta Abbey, we wore robes and had shaved heads 24/7. You had different types of robes for different things. So if you're doing work practice, you have work robes, and if you're doing your regular service, you have your more fancy robes, and if you're doing the ceremony, you have your really fancy robes. When we were at Tassajara, everybody, whether they were a monastic or a lay person, had to wear robes in the zendo. The priests all had to shave their heads. So that's kind of like this thing between picking and choosing. You don't even get to pick what clothing you wear, how you style your hair, what hair you have. Somebody, I can't remember who said it, but maybe Shizuki Roshi. We all shave our heads and put on robes to truly become ourselves, which seems strange because in the West we tend to think, if I want to express myself, what am I going to do? Maybe I'll put on my favorite shirt that really expresses my personality, or I'll put on my special necklace, or I'll like buy a particular car so people know the type of person I am. In Zen, it's the exact opposite. I had the joke, you probably heard it, it's one of my favorites. Someone would come in the temple and be like, "Where's John at?" And you're like, "Oh, bald head, black robes, glasses," which is like 50 different people, all look exactly the same. They're like, "Okay." That doesn't exactly help. But in that, putting all this stuff on like this, your personality still, your personality doesn't become uniform as well. I think everybody that met me out in the dusty world there and at the monastery and here, this personality doesn't change. They've met Shinkyu, whether I'm wearing blue jeans or whether I'm wearing the okesa. There's something about it really just brings out who you are. Another part of the environment is the schedule. There's this mantra, just follow the schedule. The schedule itself, because you're there I was there basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I leave a little, on a weekend. Not at Tassajara. Actually, you couldn't get away from Tassajara because you're out in the mountains, 2 hours away from everything. You'd have to walk an hour by foot to get out of the mountains. The schedule dominates your life. You don't have any you wake up, right? A bell wakes you up. So you don't even have an option to sleep in. This loud bell, every single day, running down all the hallways. And you go to the zendo, you meditate for an hour, then you go upstairs to the Buddha hall and you do your service. Service is done, you do 15 minutes of soji, temple cleaning. After that, breakfast. You get breakfast, and then you get to relax for an hour, which is very nice. And then you have the full group meeting, then you have your small group meeting, and then you do work for a while. Then you have lunch, then you have a break, then you have your evening work, then you have a break, you have evening service, a small break, and then you go to bed, hopefully on time, so you're exhausted. But I usually stayed up because I was so wired by the end of the day. And then you just do that again. Sometimes, on Wednesday night, there would be a Dharma talk that would break up the schedule, and on Sunday, there was a Sunday service that would break up the schedule, and you'd get a Saturday off. But that's the schedule. Every single day, just always, for 3 months straight. Well, actually, at City Center, it was that for 12 months straight for me. Is it 12 months? Yeah, 12 months. 9 months straight. So you're in the schedule, right? Same thing when you eat. When we were at Tassajara, we did oryoki meals 3 times a day. Almost. But if you've done oryoki, you're like, oh my God, really? Yes. But once in a while there would be we also had informal oryoki, which was still oryoki, but slightly informal. And then also once in a great while, a very informal meal where there's no oryoki. But with oryoki, right, you've got your 3 bowls out and they bring 3 bowls in. And if you don't like what is in there, then you're not going to eat. You can choose how much you take and if you take seconds, but that's about it. The food's really good though, so usually you take everything. But still, that's the way that this picking and choosing is it's eliminated, right? That's the next one. Choice is greatly reduced, yes. And part of that is you have to participate. If you're living at the monastery, you have to participate. Literally, Shasta Abbey and Tassajara, a little less strict at City Center, but at those 2 monasteries, if you sleep in, somebody will come to find you. During the evening meditation, usually during the first, because there's 2 meditation periods, and be not to literally drag you out of your cabin or your room back to the zendo, but to kind of see are you okay? What's up? But it is expected, that once you are healed up, that you'll be coming back to get back into the schedule. And on the opposite side of that, always what are you doing? Why aren't you in the zendo? Is that if you are sick, you have to rest. You have to stay in your room. If you are too sick to get your own food, they will bring you your own food. If you're too sick to get your own medicine, someone will bring you your medicine, which is one of the most endearing things at Shasta Abbey. I helped one of the older monks had a fall and a surgery, and there was a crew of people that would take her food and kind of check up on her to make sure she was okay. So they really do take care of you, which can also be a little bit hard on the ego with the picking and choosing, because I'm a big boy, nobody needs to take care of me. But if you get sick, you have to accept that you're going to be helped, right? Another one is work is no longer optional. It's not a secondary part of the practice. And we have our work practice here that we do during the week, and then we have a longer one on the weekends, and then there's like a longer one every now and then. But there at the monastery, if you are living at the monastery, you do have to work, and you are working for the monastery. There's an old adage from Baizhang Huaihai, who is the monk or the Zen master who is attributed with kind of starting Zen monasticism. So before him, people were kind of just living in caves or in little huts, and they had really small groups of people that the teachers were teaching. But in Baizhang's time, there were so many people that they had to start living in monasteries. And his big thing was a day without work is a day without food. Which I don't know if it was ever that intense, because there's rules about helping sick monks out going all the way back to the Buddha. But the idea is that if you were there, you don't get to pick and choose. You have to work. So I worked in the kitchen. That's one place you worked at Shasta Abbey. When I was in city center, I was on the cleaning crew. That's when we did the 21 toilets every week. And then like three or four floors of just long corridors that we had to mop every week. All sorts of other stuff. People working in administration, if you've been there a while, they're either helping guests move in and move out, making sure the rooms are stocked properly. There's people who are emailing like out into the world. I'm not really sure what they're doing. There's the people in the business office making sure all the money's all properly administered. And then also, if you're really fancy, your job is just to teach. That's all you do. You just teach. But you have to do something, right? You can't just. You do hear about this in the old days and during the Zen times, where there's monks who would. That's a whole other story, but fake monks that would just kind of lie around. There's a big problem in like Tang Dynasty China. One of the reasons why they're upset about Zen. But nowadays, yeah, you're working. Another part is you don't get to pick your community. Community is unavoidable. If somebody shows up to the meditation, they are now part of the sangha. As long as they're not, dangerous, right? If they're going to be a harm to others, then they got to go. But if anybody shows up and sits next to you in the zendo, now you are both members of the sangha. And for me, that's the rock tumbler aspect of here, right? Like the sangha is like a rock tumbler. You got the sharp rocks, you put them in a rock tumbler, and they're all smashing into each other and stuff. And then after a while, all the rough edges get smoothed out. For me, I've said it before, I never really had a problem with anybody. I just basically like everybody. But I saw other people have problems with other people, which was some were like more or less dramatic. There were some people who had to go no communication with each other for a while because for whatever reason, they just rubbed each other the wrong way, and they could not stand each other. And they were living in the same building, and they were sitting in the zendo together, and they were working in the same building, and they're going to the service, and they were eating dinner together. Like, you can't get away from it. People, like, it's basically like living in a big house. You're living in a house with an extended family of like 35 people, and you cannot get away from them. They're always there. They sleep there. They eat there. All right. Another thing is that the teachers are everywhere, and they see everything and they hear everything. The teachers are kind of like mom and dad, who maybe they're gone for the day, but when they come back home, they heard what happened. People are talking. Another aspect of that too with the teachers is that you have to have a teacher, right? Like, that's not even optional. You have, and if you don't, either a teacher if you're there long term, or a practice discussion leader who is basically a teacher. And you're supposed to meet with them once or twice a month. And if you neglect that, kind of like with the zendo, they'll come and find you and be like, I haven't seen you for a while. You should have a talk in the Dokusan room. So this is all in help with making sure the community is healthy, making sure your practice is healthy, making sure that people are getting along. If there's unmet needs that you might not even notice, like when you're talking to the teacher, they're kind of looking out for you and making sure that the health of the person and the community and the teachings is all going well. You do get to pick who your teacher is, which is also nice, but you can't not see them. So come back to the question of why the monastery. So it's not as if the monastery produces a special type of enlightened person. They are really great places to train because you can't escape the training. Everything you do is training, every minute of the day. Everything is set up so that you're just practicing all the time. You only sit meditation a little bit, unless you're in a sesshin and you're doing it a lot, because the sesshins are basically the same as there as we do here. But every minute of the day is practice. You know, somebody has to clean the toilets. Somebody's got to do it. Somebody has to cook the food, you know. Somebody has to make sure that the bills are paid, right? So the monasteries, yeah, they've been honed over the millennia in order to provide this training, this container for people. Their idea is to, you know, help us to stop trying to live our lives through our concepts, right? Through our preferences. You know, everything there, the schedule, the work, the forms, the community, the teachers, you know, they're all trying to get us to return to the body, to the present moment, trying to get us to return to doing just what is right in front of us instead of living 1,000 miles away and like things we would much rather be doing. So that's what Jiaozhou is pointing to in the Koan, and all like the crazy things he's saying, and like the kind of like, what the heck is he talking about? That's what he's talking about. You know, instead of living our opinions about our lives, we're living our lives. We're living in the moment. We're living as the moment. We're trying to learn to live in the moment, right? And I know that most of us don't live in the monastery. Me either, finally. Not that that's a bad thing. I do kind of talk about it. It seems like he's like, damn, did he really like it there? I did and I didn't. No, I was picking and choosing. There's parts of it I'm like, rather not. And there's parts of it I really like. So even though I am living in conceptual clarity, just like that monk. So I need to get more like Jiaozhou and trying to like move back and like live in this pre-verbal way of being. You know, we have jobs. Some of us have jobs. We all have families. We have responsibilities. We've got bills. We've got rent. We've got mortgages. We've got sicknesses. We've got worries. You know, life. But every one of us has the opportunity to practice, right? When we're washing the dishes, you know, just wash the dishes. I used to hate washing the dishes. Oh, I used to hate it. I used to fight with my ex about it all the time. Come home from work, I'm like, oh, she did the dishes. She better have done the dishes. Come in and there's like more dishes than there were when I left. Like, she didn't do the dishes. Ah! And you know, through training, for whatever reason, I found that doing the dishes is very peaceful and satisfying. It's a strange practice. It's strange to see that develop in your practice. This thing that you just hated so much. Like, why did I hate it so much? I don't know. Now I like it for whatever reason. You know, if you're really listening to somebody that's talking with you, really just listen to someone who's talking to you. You know, don't form 1,000 opinions or counterpoints or like, dang, they're wrong, right? Oh, like that can't be right. Just really listen to what they're saying. When you're driving home from work, when you're driving to work, that's another one. I used to drive to work. I'm like, oh God, anything else but this? Like, do I have to really go in? I could quit today. So I'm just, you know, driving home after work. I'm like, I just can't wait to get home. This dude's driving so slow in front of me. Like, just go. I just want to get back. You know, just drive. Just feel the flow, you know, of the road beneath. Maybe it's a little bit rougher than that, but sometimes even if it's rough, you just feel it, right? You know, when we're just sitting together, just sit together. When we're just chanting, just chant together. When we're practicing, just practice together. You know, words do, right? They do arise, and that is also part of this just chanting. Like you're just chanting, all of a sudden you're like 1,000 miles off. You see that you're doing that. You just come back to the chanting. Or if you're doing the dishes and you find yourself being like, oh, I hate this so much. You just come back to the feel of the dishes in your hand, like the warmth of the water, the weight of the plate, the smell of the soap, the gleam of the clean dishes, a clean silverware is like it's beautiful. If you got like if you've ever not looked at it closely, it's like, oh, very nice. You know, we can spend most of our lives in the narration of our lives. That's something that we can definitely do, something I've definitely done, sometimes I still do. We can live in our evaluations. We can live whether, decide, we can live in our decision, like, do I like this? Do I not like this? No. We can live in picking and choosing. Or we can practice just living, just being, right? So, with that, we come to the end of the talk, and we'll take a hint from Jiao Zhou, and we will all bow and withdraw. Did anybody have questions? I don't know if there's any